Thank you, Doug. That's one of my favorites. Thank you, thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Reverend Bonnie, and it's great to be here as usual. I noticed the last couple times I went back on YouTube that it seems all we're putting on is the talk. So I'm actually going to reread the reading so that the people have the reading with my talk, because it's important. It's important to what I'm going to be talking about. I'm also going to reread it because one of the things that I've noticed is sometimes we need to hear something twice before it really lands. Or 3 times, Pamela's saying, and you will get a 3rd time, I promise. So this is number 2. Who are you? Who am I? The answer isn't a role, title, profession, or any other worldly status. The question helps us discover the essence of who we truly are as spirit in expression. On the journey of mining our inner treasure, we bring to light the hidden beliefs that inhibit our full aliveness. We can then take the necessary actions to transform these limiting beliefs into an empowering awareness of our inherent wholeness, and this is key, and live it. Referring again to the Sermon by the Sea, which was one of the talks, the last talks that Holmes is known for, we find Holmes' elaboration of this inner transformation. Not through me, but you to me and I to you through each other. The revelation of the self to the self. We go back to the highways and byways of life with something so great that never again will anything be quite the same. A little more light shall come, a little greater glory added to the glory we already possess, a deeper consciousness, a higher aspiration, a broader certainty of mind. The living Spirit shall through us walk anew in its own creation. A new glory come with a new dawn. You did a great job too, Pamela. I wasn't trying, I just think we need to hear it, and I want the people who are going to see the recording to have it also. Sometimes people ask me, how do you know what to talk about? How do you know what Spirit wants for everybody to hear? How do you know that what you're going to say is really what needs to be said? How do you know that the energy that's happening around in the atmosphere is being addressed by what you're going to say? And one of the things that speaks to me, or one of the ways that I know, is when I hear the same message coming from somewhere else that I've already been thinking about sharing. This month's topic, the fear and the furious, fear as a motivator and guide, is one that I have been contemplating since the last time I spoke, which is probably over a month ago. And last week, Reverend Yvette basically gave my talk. And I thought, that's Spirit affirming that now is the time for this message to come through. Reverend Yvette focused on the furious, the anger, and how it can inform and motivate us. So if you haven't seen it or didn't hear it, go back and watch it on YouTube. I had been contemplating the fear aspect of this month's topic. She was focused on the fury or the anger, but both of us came up with basically the same conclusion as to how those emotions can be gifts or inspirations to us and move us forward in some way. Well, you probably learned this as a kid when you were being taught how to cross the street, or maybe you taught it to your kids. And we also learned this when we were driving and would come up to an intersection. What is that lesson that we were taught? Okay, again. Stop, look, and listen. We all learn that. And believe it or not, that same lesson can apply to what we are doing in our relationships and in our spiritual life. Several of you have used the Fear to Faith worksheet with me, either in class or we worked on it together in a process. And what that Fear to Faith worksheet does is help move us out of a situation where we're feeling fearful and into a place where we can deepen in our faith. And basically that worksheet is doing the same thing. It's making us stop, look, and listen. It's a process. Now, referring to the anger aspect, Reverend Yvette didn't really use the word stop, but she said, notice, take a moment to breathe. Notice your anger. Realize what it's saying to you. Realize that it's saying something needs my attention. And to me, that's the stop, when you just take a moment to breathe. Then she suggested that we look at what's triggering that anger. Where does it come from? What might it be rooted in? And then we listen for a message that it has to tell us. So essentially, without using those exact same words, she said, stop, look, and listen. Ernest Holmes says this, and this is on page 188 in the Science of Mind text. If you have a vague, subtle, unconscious fear, be quiet and ask yourself, who am I? What am I? Who is speaking? What is my life? In this manner, think right back to principle until your thought becomes perfectly clear. Now, if you haven't taken any classes, you might not understand what he's talking about there. He's basically saying when we ask ourselves, who am I? What am I? Who's speaking? When we think back to principle, we realize it's Spirit speaking through me. I am God expressing. So once we get back into principle, he says, our thought becomes perfectly clear again. Such is the power of right thinking, that it cancels and erases everything unlike itself. It answers every question, solves all problems, is the solution to every difficulty. It is like the sunlight of eternal truth, bursting through the clouds of obscurity and bathing all of life in its glory. It is the absolute with which you are dealing. And this next sentence is in all caps. All there really is God. Another way of saying it. The sunlight of eternal truth bursting through the clouds. I love that metaphor. And once that happens and we've aligned ourselves with principle again, the clarity and the light as to what's the next step. And Yvette also talked about this. What's mine to do? What choices do I have in front of me right now? What are my next actions? Reverend Yvette concluded with an invitation for us at the end of her talk. She suggested that we go home and journal, contemplate or journal. She actually said to write it down, any recent situation that you might have experienced anger. And then look at what was your response to that? What message might have been coming through? And then she also challenged us with how would love have shifted, or maybe you did apply love, and how did it shift that situation? So did any of you take up her invitation? Did any of you work with that this week? Yes, we got a few. Anyone have any messages they'd like to share really briefly that came through? I know the quiet one is not going to do that. What happened for me is that a friend of mine and I had a little spat about a week before this talk, and we were able to say to each other after Yvette's talk how wonderful it was to take the time to stop, look within, and listen to each other as to what had gone on, how that happened, and to work our way through that process and keep our friendship intact. After Judy's talk 2 weeks ago, I began contemplating, who are we as a Center for Spiritual Living? Who are we here in Las Cruces? What is our point? Why are we here? How are we any different than any other church in town? And how are we any different than any other nonprofit that's doing great work in the community? I was contemplating that. I was thinking, how would I answer that? What is so important about this community right here? And Judy talked about all the classes that we have taken together, the journey that we have gone through over many, many years together. And I had to let her know it's my absolute pleasure, because it's not all about me teaching and giving and you all receiving and taking it all in. Every class is an exchange of information. I gain, you gain, we give to each other, and it's been an amazing journey for us hasn't it, Judy? And for many of us who've been in these classes together. And one of the things she mentioned was how we mirror things for each other. Sometimes the mirror shows us stuff we're not too happy with, but part of her talk was how the mirror showed her how wonderful she is. The mirror that we give each other sometimes is to see the good in us that we aren't able to see. And so to me then, I answered my question as to why this community, this Center for Spiritual Living, with first our teaching. Our teaching is unique. The way we approach what we teach is quite unique compared to many of the other churches in town. And the second reason I came up with is to assist each other in living these teachings, to walk with each other as we practice these teachings, to be that mirror for each other, to support each other, to love each other along the path, and to practice with each other what we believe, to take ourselves back to principle. So the third time you get to hear a portion of this morning's talk. Holmes's words said this in the reading: "Not through me, but you to me and I to you. Through each other, the revelation of the self to the self, and then a little more light shall come." So even Ernest Holmes, our teacher, was saying it's not all about everything coming through me. It's that we have this amazing exchange as a community together. And together we practice these teachings, and a little more light comes through. So I kept contemplating, and as we work together, as we play together, game night is important. We play together. We connect with each other. We create and participate in events together. We're running the business of the center. We're reading books, we're having studies, we're going to classes. All of this is time that we get to share together, and all of it is time when fear and anger sometimes pop up. All of that along the way with all the good stuff. I can't believe she did that. I can't believe she said that. That person drives me crazy. What if they don't like me? What will they think if I share that aspect of my thoughts or what I've done in my past? How dare they? What was so-and-so thinking? Why are they doing this to me? Why are they expecting me to do this? Etc., etc. Thoughts and scenarios are endless, and those are all reactions to or through anger and fear when that stuff starts to come up. And those are also basically normal whenever we have a group of human beings come together in a space, working and playing and developing and building together. So we all have heard the normal response to fear: fight, flight, or freeze. And I thought about anger as well, and I realized those are similar responses. When we want to fight, we argue, we yell, we attack, and what we're doing is trying to protect ourselves. That's what we think we're doing. So we lash out, and that's what Yvette talked about last week too. Flight: I'm out of here, I don't need this. I'm not sticking around for this. And freeze: shut down, clam up, disconnect, disengage. Any of that sound familiar? Any of you been there? So these reactions, as we know, have had their purpose in the evolution of humankind. But I don't think they often carry us through and forward in our relationships today. And I don't think they serve our higher spiritual practice or spiritual selves. And that's why I think this month's topic is coming up when it is. The focus being on fear and the furious. It is time now to evolve in how we relate to and through those emotions of fear and fury. As a community, here in the heart of Las Cruces, we're growing. We have more activities, we have teams and committees. We have people working together to beautify the building. We're handling lots of different events. They've come back to life since we were shut down. We have board-related details, lots of ideas, lots of energy bubbling around. And like I said, that provides lots of opportunity for fear and fury to also perkle up, along with getting to know each other better, making new friends, deepening in old friendships, and having new ways of relating. It all is part of the package. It's all opportunity to practice our principles. So again, the conclusion that I came to as to why here, why now, this center in the heart of Las Cruces is to practice what we believe together. We were first attracted to the teaching. We wanted to learn as much as we could. Then we started doing fun stuff with each other. And then we got to practice all the stuff that we had learned from the teaching. It comes back to the teaching, the principles of love and oneness. So, of course, again, from Ernest Holmes. He says, our part is to be ready and willing to be guided into truth and liberty. If in the making of a demonstration, he uses the word demonstration to mean you've prayed for something and it shows up. So in the making of a demonstration, it becomes necessary to change our mode of living, then the law will point the way and we will follow. Our correct choice will be part of the workings of the law. All doubt and fear must go, and in their place must come faith and confidence, for we shall be led by the Spirit into all good. So my prayer, my hope, and my belief is that before anger or fear gets to trigger anyone here to make them take flight, pick a fight, or freeze into disconnected oblivion, that we practice that simple, yet not always easy, that simple childhood lesson that was created to keep us safe. That we practice stop, look, and listen. We stop, we take that breath. That means we stop talking, we stop texting, we stop any activity, stop, and breathe. Then we take the time to look within. What's being triggered? Where and when has this happened to me before? Does this look familiar? What's going on inside me? Why? Where is it coming from? And then listen. Listen to the messages from the anger, from the fear, and from your higher self. And as Yvette said, how do we apply love, one of our principles then, to whatever's going on? Reverend Dr. Edward Villion, who was the community's spiritual leader for several years, he wrote this article under the heading of Healing Our Way to Oneness, and this is in this month's Science of Mind magazine. And he shared with us what he said is a doctor friend's prescription for navigating fearful times. And this is the prescription: connect, care, communicate, and gather. Connect. Does that sound familiar? We have the 3 C's every other Saturday. It was second, fourth Saturdays now. A time to connect with each other in addition to classes and other things, talking after service. He says, there's something irreplaceable about human closeness, holding hands, working together, being present. Technology can't replace the nervous system's response to genuine human contact. Reverend Bram, I'm going to call you out, but that's why Reverend Bram showed up today. Real human contact instead of just through the Zoom, right? Nothing can replace that. Hug your friends, volunteer, show up. The second thing, care. Be present for someone, whether you know them or not. Make eye contact. These moments of connection matter in ways we can't always track. The third thing was communicate. Express yourself with kindness. This is important. Take responsibility for the emotional wake your words leave behind. Now, sometimes that wake is created when we're in fear or anger. Whenever possible, speak face to face. Real-time connection can support mood and resilience in ways that pure digital exchanges often can't. And the fourth was gather. Seek out community, join group meditations, participate in local events. Coming together creates a field of creative energy capable of inspiring individuals and communities. He then goes on to say that doesn't replace doing the work that needs to be done out in society to look at systematic solutions, policy changes, all that kind of stuff. But what he did say is those things, as we do them in community with each other, help to support us. And he said at the end, fear may still arise, sometimes daily. Practice helps me remember what my source is, even in the presence of fear. And with that reminder, I typically become more capable of wise action, tending my nervous system, seeking professional support when needed, strengthening community, and participating in the policy and cultural work that reduces harm. He said, in this way, fear can become less of a jailer and more of a compass, guiding me toward courage and relationship, motivating me to the next right step. I know that was a lot, but I thought all of that was so important, and it's all part of the answer for me as to why we come together as a community. What is our purpose? To support each other as we do that other work, to be here to connect with each other. So let's take another look then at our the normal response to fear and anger, and see how we might transform them or evolve them into something that can serve us better. So fight, that energy that comes up. We could fight error with truth. You ever heard that? Fight error with truth. We do that in our own head. Another way of saying that is a denial and an affirmation. We teach that in our classes. The back of the Science of Mind textbook has a lot of meditations that Holmes gave us for different situations, and many of them have that denial and then the affirmation. We're fighting error with truth. So if you have a fighting spirit that rises up, you can use that spirit to fight error in your own mind with truth, and I suggest speaking it out loud. Speak that truth. Speak what's the error. Speak the truth. Use what I call your mother voice. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. We all have that mother voice. We all listen to it. That is wrong. This is right. This is error. This is truth. Speak that with your mother voice and let that fight out. Flight. Flight is the desire to run, to hide, to isolate. Go ahead, leave the situation, but know that you're not leaving for good. Again, you take the time away to do what I've been talking about, to stop, look, and listen. Whether you need to journal, go within, listen to yourself. Likewise with freeze, take that opportunity to breathe, count, go into prayer. It all cycles back around. They all support each other. They all work together. The original purpose behind our reactions to fear was to keep us safe. And as we know, we've evolved beyond needing to react to things like the saber-toothed tiger. So how do we apply those natural responses to fear to the fear that shows up today in our lives? We can fight error with truth. We can flight to within and listen and freeze. Stop all activity, arguing, talking, freeze, stop. In other words, take those natural responses that you have, that we have, and allow them to consciously evolve into a more effective or modern response. We're not suppressing. We're not ignoring, we're not spiritually bypassing. We're acknowledging that this energy is coming through us and letting it move through us in a different way. So far, I've been talking about the kinds of fears that come up. Maybe it's fear of being rejected. Maybe it's fear of speaking up to somebody that I need to share something with. Maybe it's fear of how they'll respond. Maybe it's fear mixed with anger, because sometimes that just all comes in one big jumble. Over the years, I've learned that fear also shows up in other ways, and it's just a slightly different aspect of fear. The fear of trying something new. Fear that arises maybe before you leave for a trip, or meeting someone for the first time, or a job interview, or maybe starting a new job. And the way I've seen that kind of fear is like it's two sides of a coin. You've got fear on one side, but you've got excitement on the other. Sometimes we're feeling the fear, but there's also something in there to be excited about. And what I've learned is if I can shift my focus from the fear to the excitement, I can have a different experience of that situation. So again, when you take time to stop, look for the excitement too, and listen, you can move through that in a whole different way. And for those of you who know me and have heard me speak, which I think is almost everybody in this room, you know that when I can share with you and I act like I know what I'm talking about up here, that I've also been through a lot of questions. I'm always bringing up questions. And this talk was the same. One of the questions that I've had around fear is, do our fears act like many of our other thoughts and manifest things in our life the same way affirmations can manifest? In other words, if I'm rehearsing a fear over and over and over, do I eventually manifest what it is I'm afraid of? Just like if I affirm something over and over and I manifest that. So I wore my spider today because I was terrified of spiders, and then I ended up in the hospital thanks to one. So was that the result of my fear? There are several parts of Ernest Holmes' teaching that make it sound like, yes, that's so. This is one. Again, Science of Mind text. Worry, fear, anger, jealousy, and other emotional conditions are mental in their nature, and as such, are being recognized as the hidden cause of a large part of all the physical suffering to which the flesh is heir. Thoughts are things, and we've all heard that statement if you've been here for a while. So, why did that come up for me? Well, in addition to contemplating fright, fear, and fury this weekend, Friday was the 6th anniversary of my son's leaving the planet. And back then, and then Friday it came up again, I had to ask myself, did my fear of losing him help to create, don't cry in front of me, Pamela, help to create his death? I've contemplated that over and over. Why would I think that? When I was 7 years, I spent 7 years trying to get pregnant. And when I was going through that process, a therapist asked me, what are you afraid of? If you get pregnant or you get a child, what are you afraid of? My response was, they'll take it away from me. Well, where did that come from? Well, when I was 7 years old, my mother was pregnant. I was so excited about having a baby in the house. I loved babies. Every chance I got, I've got pictures of me holding different babies from wherever I could hold one from. And my mother never came home with that baby. If we were told it was stillborn, I won't go into that story. But my 7-year-old brain felt like the baby had been taken from me. And that fear was still present. So during all the years I spent trying to get pregnant, during the year I spent working on adoption, that fear was very present. And the final year of adoption, at that time, I had to file in court. I had to wait a year to finalize it. During that year, every month I had to send reports back to the agency of how he was doing, what he'd done, did he say his first word, blah, blah, blah. Every month I was in fear that they would find something wrong with me and take him back. When it was finalized, I thought it was done. I felt like, scot-free, all clear. So 32 years later, when he died, I had to ask myself, was this a manifestation of that earlier fear? Does fear work this way? Does the universe work this way? So Friday morning, all this is going on as I'm talking to myself, pondering what to talk about, pondering these questions. And I was texting with a friend who has the skill of communicating with people on the other side of the veil. I was semi-kidding, but semi-not. And I said to her, I told her what day it was. And I said, any word from Ben? What I didn't tell her was as soon as I texted that and sent it off, I heard in my own head, Just chill, Mom, it's all good. I didn't tell her that. And a few minutes later, she sent me a lot of things that had come through her that she had written down. And this is part of it. Allow the tangle of questions you still have to loosen and blow away. No more knots of wondering about me. Your heart holds the truths. Allow them to flutter away with the wind taking them. And he ended the whole thing with, I love you, Mom, B. So, was that a manifestation of today's wishful thinking? Or was that a message coming from two different places that's basically the same, just different wording? I don't know 100%, but what I do know is I tend to believe what I hear more than once. And what I do know is that when I take the time to stop, to look, and to listen, it eases the pain of grief and loss, and it evolves my responses to fear and fury and how I interact with other people, and takes it to a different level. I also know that we can get messages from many, many different places. I think Spirit, the universe, speaks to us through each other. That's why it's not just me to you, it's you to me. We all share messages with each other. From things that we read, things that we see. You might see a billboard that speaks exactly what you needed to hear, even a license plate sometimes. Those messages come through in all different ways. And I tend to think when it comes through in multiple ways, that means in that moment, that's true for me. And I take the time, and when I take the time to stop and look within and listen, those messages can bring peace and wisdom. Fear and anger can catapult us into a deeper knowing, a deeper understanding, and deeper relationships, whether among friends, family, or our community right here, especially when we let our responses evolve through stopping, looking, and listening. And as Ben said to me, just chill, it's all good. And so it is.